Welcome to the McKinney Podcast. This is a different voice than you typically hear. I am Allison Jenkins, wife of James.
I'm Elizabeth Mahusay, wife of Fred Mahusay.
And we have for our guest today,
Maylee Thomas-Fuller, wife of Mayor George Fuller, but boy, was that a change in my life.
I am excited to talk to you today.
Well, good. Let's just hope that everybody's excited to hear it.
I have no doubt they will be, because I think a lot of people see you from, just from an outside perspective looking in and want to know more of who Maylee is. And this is such a great venue to be able to hear more about that.
I appreciate the opportunity. And, it just depends on which hat, and I love hats, that I'm wearing for the day. But I'm pretty much what you see is what you get. And I can tell you that when George started, when he first told me he wanted to run for mayor, I was like, ooh, I don't know. I might be the biggest handicap ever for your campaign. But it ended up actually being something really good for us, because it allowed me to, gain access into a world that I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into. And for him, it really brought him into a place where he felt more comfortable speaking in public, which always I was the one that did that. And now we fight for the mic.
That is so true. The very first time I ever saw you, Fred and I were at Waters Creek in Allen, and your band,
right?
You all were playing there, and I was like, Fred, who is that? You were singing, you were the lead, and then of course later, George ran for mayor, and you were much more prevalent in the public eye.
Yeah.
So that is so true.
Well, we were just at Waters Creek. George and I rode, we've gotten into bicycling, e-bike riding, and we rode our bikes over there the other day, and I pulled up and I said, look at this. Can you believe that had to be, I don't even know, the first time we played there was probably right after they opened, and I'm sure they've been there at least 10 or 12 years, maybe 15. And we played right there in the park. Everybody brought their kids, and which that is my favorite thing to do, is to play festivals and to play gigs where it's family oriented. I love that. I spent so much time in clubs and nightclubs and stuff that it's really nice to be able to play for families a lot.
Yeah, so true. Go ahead.
So I was just, today is really the first day I have actually met you. So I am coming from an outsider's perspective. Like James and I moved to McKinney 2 years ago. I am a mom with young kids, one in elementary, one in preschool. So you all are very established in the community. You have a history here, and I am just beginning. So I am coming in with the perspective of, what do I need to know? You all have made names for yourselves so well, and you have gone from rock star to first lady of McKinney, and you've melded them so well that you have not lost your identity, but you've also created more in the community. So I was just curious, how did you do that?
Well, honestly, it probably helped that I have been running a nonprofit since 1992, and we moved from Dallas area to McKinney, and we moved the nonprofit there. We started out in Dallas, and our very first, I guess, support that we did was for the Genesis Women's Shelter, which I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they've been established now for 30-something years. Jan Langbine, who's the director and a very good friend of mine, started that. And so I had a little bit of preparation because of being a director of a nonprofit. You're speaking to so many different people all the time. So outside of the band, I was able to understand what it was like to try to be all things to all people and be, open and inclusive and understanding of all the different things that there are in the world for us to be a part of. And so that helped with the mayor, first lady thing. That first lady thing I have such a hard time with. I'm going to tell you a funny story, though. I don't know if you've been over to District 121, but last year they did this beautiful a memorial for me with a big peace sign. And if you go over there, I mean, it's really cool, and it's orange, which is my favorite color. And my grandson and my granddaughters went over there with their mom to see it. And I happened to, be there with them, and I'm looking at this And my grandson looked at me and he's reading the plaque and he said, "You were the very first lady in McKinney?" He was so blown
serious.
away about that, and I was
So
like,
literal.
I'm not even going to go there. I said, well, kind of, It just was so cute.
That is awesome.
That was the best way it's ever been put, because that's about the only first lady kind of that I really feel that I deserve. But honestly, it really has helped because of the nonprofit establishment for so many years, that I was able to understand that I'm going to run across a lot of different people, a lot of different ideas, and I want them all to understand that they have a voice. And that was my reason for starting the Love Life Foundation. It was a voice for women and children that had been in abusive situations and felt like they didn't have anybody to speak on their behalf. So I had, not to take it to another place this quickly, but I will say that I started it because I was a victim myself. And I knew one day I would get to a place where I could talk about it and share. And when I was in my 30s, I finally got to the place where I recognized that it's not, it shouldn't be a stigma to a person because they've been a victim. And I wanted to be able to speak out against what I feel is, it's unfortunate, as large as a country as we are, that we still have it that goes on. But we've been going for 32 years now, and it's been a wonderful, beautiful journey.
That's
and
one of the
it'll
questions I
continue.
had was, how long have you been growing Love Life Foundation?
Yeah, 32,
so 32 years.
We started in 1992, and it's just been wonderful, been a wonderful ride, and a lot of beautiful volunteers that have come on board throughout all those years, and we just continue to do what we can little by little. It's a very grassroots effort. We've never had any big, corporations that funded it. It's always been, very organic.
Thinking about the fact that you created Love Life Foundation, one, because you have been a victim and you wanted to give a voice to people who felt like they needed one. For the listener who either themselves are in the midst of that or they've suffered as a victim, what would you say to encourage them to be courageous in really speaking out and finding their voice?
It's been very enlightening to me how many women will come up to me and say, I was ashamed, I was embarrassed, I didn't know how to talk about this because I didn't want to be judged. And so I start from the very get-go saying, looking them in the eye, and somehow I'll try to connect to them in a way where I say, listen, you can't control what happened. Especially for me, I was a young child, and it was in a family member. So it was a stepdad. And I actually lost my mother over it because I think she was a victim herself as a child, and I think she just felt like this was something that just happened and you just had to sweep it under the rug. But to just look them in the eye and say, listen, you cannot change what happened to you, but you can change what happens to others. Absolutely. And when you put it in that perspective and they start thinking about what they've been through, then they start finding their voice. Because intrinsically for me, it was always about wanting to keep it from happening to someone else and giving them the strength and the courage to say, no, this is not right, and no, I'm not going to allow this. And of course, when I was a kid, we didn't have an advocacy center. We didn't have CASA. We had the justice system, and you had to testify against your family. And
so difficult.
I was a young teenage girl, barely teenage, and I couldn't do it. And so my dad rescued me. My parents were divorced, and my dad rescued me to come and live with him and his wife that was literally 30 years younger than him. So she was like having a big sister and not really having a mom. So that in itself played a big role in my, my survival of it all. But I'm just so grateful that I have come to a place now where I know that people will come up and tell me their stories because they feel comfortable knowing that I've been through it and I know exactly what it felt like and what it feels like.
Yeah. So important.
I think we need to talk about it more. It's just like everything in today's world. We talk about the mental health crisis. We just need to talk about it more. We need to let people
Agreed.
understand that this is it can't be shunned any longer. And the more you hide it, the more we're not going to be able to make change.
Yeah, so true.
Especially considering that you started in 1992. And when I think back to 1992 versus the openness that people have about conversations now, that is a testament to the bravery that you have in creating something and saying, hey, this has happened to me. I want to be able to help others. And so in a way, it was preparing you so much for the role that you are in 2024 and the warmth that you have in approaching people. You have a very approachable personality. You can speak to people, you make eye contact, and what else can you ask for in somebody to represent your city?
Wow, you're so sweet to say that. But let's just still talk about how great I am, okay? Because I'm not that great. Just ask all of my kids.
Well, yeah, all of us have our flaws, right? But thinking about that, I think Allison's point is it was preparation for your role, right?
Well, I can tell you that when
Mayor.
I met George, and I show people pictures, and he's like, don't do that. His hair was as long as mine. I mean, he was a rock and roller, and we were playing music together. I mean, I met him. He owned a recording studio, but he always had this entrepreneurial spirit. And he also was always the person that people would call for advice. I can't tell you how many times I would be with him and people would call him and say, hey, I've got this situation. And so he kind of had... I tell him all the time he kind of had a pastor's heart, and he's like, I can't even imagine being a pastor. I said, well, you are. I said, and now even in the city, we have a lot of people that call him for advice. It has nothing to do with the city. It has to do with them personally.
Yes. And
knowing the things that we've been through. And George and I have been through a lot. I mean, we've had a lot of heartache. I had a brother that was murdered. He's had relatives that have been treated very wrongly, and both of us have this heart for caring and loving people, and that's what drew me to him in the very beginning. We were friends for 6 months. I hired him to be the guitar player in my band, and he had a girlfriend, I had a boyfriend, and we just were friends, and we started talking and sharing life with one another, and we realized that actually the story is true story, and my girlfriend will attest to this. I was setting him up with one of my best friends because I thought he was just this most incredible guy, and I was already with someone that was actually not working out, but I wasn't thinking that way. This is my friend, my buddy, and so I told my girlfriend about him, and so she can't wait to meet him. She's flying in from California. I can't wait to meet George. She goes, but you know what, honey? This is how she talked to me. I'm just wondering, because I know you and I'm not going to say the guy's name, are not really working out so well. Why wouldn't you date him? And I was like, oh, it's not like that. He's like my brother. We know so much about each other, and we share all these things. And I hung up the phone with her, and I was thinking, why haven't I considered him? And 2 weeks later, when she showed up, I picked her up at the airport. She goes, when do I get to meet George? I said, I kind of decided that I'm going to start dating him.
Change of plans.
And here we are together after all these years, still together, and we laugh about that. George always says, "Yeah, it could have been Candy." That was my girlfriend.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that.
So I'm a real believer in. I love it when in fact, my daughter that we adopted, Millie, that's from Africa. I just love her. She is with a boy that they were friends, and I saw it. They came to a show. In fact, it was at the Hub 121, the little outdoor place that we play. And they came to the show, and they're out there, chit-chatting, hanging out, and I'm looking at that stuff that's going on, because she keeps telling, we're just friends, Mom, we're just friends. They work together. And I saw her later on that night. I said, so you're just friends with him? She goes, yeah. And I go, no, Mama knows you're more than friends. She goes, you think so? When she said you think so, I knew she was open for it, right? Wasn't even a week later. She's like, oh, well, we've decided to start dating. I was like, okay.
Oh, I'm so surprised right now.
Yeah, I know. I was like, yeah, whatever.
Speaking of Millie, tell us about, so how many children do you all have? And
So we have 4 children, all adults now, from 34 to 23, 2 boys, 2 girls, and 2 grandchildren. And I actually am so lucky because I got to do the whole plethora of motherhood. From a stepmother, my oldest son is Austin. He's been in my life since he was 1. And then I have 2 biological children, Rain and Layla, 26 and 23. And then our adopted daughter, Millie, who's 26. We adopted her when she was 9 years old from Ethiopia. Wow. And that in itself is a whole show. And she came over here from a different culture, spoke no English whatsoever.
Wow.
And you wouldn't know it. And if you met her, there's no way you would know it. And out of all the children George and I have, she's the only one with green eyes. And, you know, which is very, it's more common in Ethiopia than it is in other cultures. And I'm not really sure why, but there are a lot of beautiful people there. I mean, they are really are beautiful people, but she's got green eyes, and all the other kids came out with brown eyes because I guess brown is kind of dominant.
Oh yeah, for
The
sure.
dominant
And
color, yeah.
so George has that brown in his eyes, and mine are more like blue-green. And people all the time when we go places, she'll be with me, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, you have your mother's eyes."
And you were like,
And we're
absolutely.
like,
Yes, she
does.
I love that. That is so fun.
You know, and since we did talk a little bit about the foundation, Millie was my she rescued me from all the heartache that I had by losing my mother, because it was right around that age when my mom was estranged from me over the assault. And when we adopted her, and by the way, we had 3 children. We weren't looking to adopt. This was a God thing. It was a complete God thing. But when we got that child, it was like I got to give her what I felt like I had missed.
Oh.
And it was a redemption for me. And we talk about that a lot. We talk about how it was healing for her because she lost her mother. You know, obviously she was an orphan. She'd lost both of her parents, and she remembered her mother a lot. I think she had a little bit of a recollection of her dad, but she remembered her mom a lot. And I guess she was a little bit angry because in her mind, you know, they left her.
Yeah.
And so for her, it was a redemption to have a mother that chose her. And for me, it was a redemption to have the ability to love a child the way I felt like I didn't get loved. And so it's been a beautiful journey for both of us.
That is so awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. So if you're out there thinking, you know, of whether or not you should foster or adopt, if you've got the ability to do it, please, we need more people doing that, and especially with a heart that understands what it's like to be without. And sometimes people feel like if their mother wasn't good to them, they can't be a good mother, and that's just not true. Because what you do is you end up being all those things that you felt like you missed, and it's actually a good thing. You know, it helps you to be that right kind of love, and you know, it's just a beautiful cycle of life, right?
I love that encouragement where that's concerned. So I want to ask what I think maybe many people want to ask or not, but I want to know the background on your style choices.
Oh my gosh, girl, I'm just a hippie. I mean, so I was born in Texas. My parents moved away when I was 2 to Pensacola Beach. And if you know anything about that area, it's just gorgeous. And we lived there for 15 years. I grew up barefoot, and my mother was a hippie. And so I grew up in an environment where it was just anything goes. And I just never left it. And when people stop me all the time and say, oh my gosh, you remind me of the 70s. And I go, well, I never left the 70s. I just keep dragging it along. And I just laugh because, I mean, I've got clothes that I've had for 40 years in my closet that I still wear. And my daughters, both of them, are like, Mom, you can't get rid of anything. We're going to, one of these days, we're going to open up a store with all of your stuff, and people are going to freak out that you have all these clothes from all those years. And, you know, I mean, I'm just one of those people. That's why I said you kind of get what you get, you know.
Yeah.
And when George first became mayor, it was so cute. He penned a phrase that I'd never heard before, and of course I won't let him use it anymore now, but he'd say, honey, you're going to have to hippie down. And I'd go, what? And he goes, you got to hippie down a little bit. These people are not going to be able to take this. And I was like, let me tell you something. I am behind you 100% for being mayor, but if you're going to try to take away my authenticity, I'm going to put my feet down and say no, because this is my life too.
Absolutely.
And I want to serve, and I don't think whether I have bell bottoms on or slacks are going to make a difference on how I serve. Now, I don't want to be a stumbling block to someone else, but we're not talking about me wearing something, some stripper outfit that, you know, people are going to be offended at. I mean, the only thing that might be offensive to them is, you know, it's not exactly up to speed on what they would wear, but this is my life, and I want to be authentic to who I am,
Yes.
and this makes me happy, and I'm just a happy, free, loving spirit that I want to continue to be that. I'm going to be that. All the grandkids have pinned my name May, so that's my grandma name is May, and now a lot of my friends call me that, and I'm just going to be that old hippie May that everybody talks about when I'm in my 80s and 90s, and they're going to put their heads down and go, oh, there she is, that crazy woman, you know. But
I love it.
But it is what it is, and I'm not going to change.
You are
I can't
aligned
change.
with the slogan of the city, unique by nature.
I am
That is
unique
you.
by nature.
You
honey.
are absolutely aligned and on brand. So thank you.
Well, I really do think that we put a lot of pressure on kids to be a certain way, and I use that term very loosely. I tell kids all the time, you find the best you can be, and be authentic to yourself. Don't try to be something that you think other people want you to be.
Love that.
Because it's going to be too hard. You're not going to be able to continue to do that. You're going to be always striving to try to find what that is. And there's so much pressure nowadays for these kids. I'm so grateful I didn't grow up in this era. And I want to say that, you know, in a positive way, because I've got grandchildren.
Right.
But it's important for me to always tell them, stop worrying about the likes and the affirmation that you get on there, because it's not real. And, you know, what people are putting out is not real. My daughters especially, when they were teenagers, it was so hard because, you know, they're in their 20s now. So they did grow up with this
With
pressure.
Facebook and
yes.
all the social media.
And yes, and the bodies, the girls, you know, putting themselves out there in these perfect bodies and making it look like that's what everybody wants. And I'll never forget showing my daughter Layla her grandparents, and that she thought were very cool. And I said, look, they're all completely different body styles, and they're just comfortable in their skin. That's what I want you to be. I want you to be comfortable with who you are and where you are and what you are. And I mean, everybody's different. We're all original, and, you know, there's no such thing as ordinary. We're all extraordinary. And just find your peace with that, and be in a place where you can be happy and not compare yourself to other things that are not true. You know, and we know now, right, that the pictures that you see, they're not exactly what you really look like.
Oh, absolutely not.
And, you know, you have all these filters and all these things that you can do, and it puts the wrong emphasis on the wrong things. This is all temporal. This is all going to change. I can't tell you how many times I look down at my hands and I go, who is that? Because in my head,
I know.
I'm still in my 20s.
Amen,
I mean,
sister.
you know.
It is.
But my hands are what is that?
Yeah. Where did that
Where
come
did those
from?
come from?
Where did this craping
Yeah,
come
what
from?
is that?
Like, what is that? Yeah, I'm with you on that. Go ahead.
So just the overconnectivity that people have, kids and adults alike, and the comparison. So what would you say to a mom with young kids as they are trying to merge their lives into the 2020s, what would you say to them that would be relevant with social media and the overconnectivity, but also being themselves and unique and not having to, or authentic, and not having to give into the pressure of that social pressure?
Well, I feel like a lot of people are probably going to be upset with me over this. I feel like we put these electronic things in their hands to keep us from having to connect because we need time. And believe me, I waited. I was a late bloomer. I get this, people, and I want you to really understand what you're getting ready to hear. I went to my 20-year class reunion, and I still hadn't had any kids yet. Okay?
Wow.
And I went to a 20-year class reunion. I went to high school. So I told you I moved to Florida when I was 2, lived there for 15 years. Then my parents got divorced, and I moved to Oklahoma, where my dad started a business in a little town called Yukon, where Garth Brooks is from, which, by the way, we went to school at the same time. He was a little younger than me. And so we moved to Oklahoma, which was a complete culture shock. I was this little hippie girl from the beach going to, Oklahoma. And I literally felt like I was in the Twilight Zone when we pulled up to the school because I saw a guy standing out front with a skull thing in his back pocket. And
oh, my goodness.
Howdy, ma'am. I was like, Dad, please don't make me go in there.
And how old were you then?
I was in the 9th grade.
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, it was a little tough. But actually, I ended up loving it, and I, made a lot of great friends, and everybody knew I was that hippie girl, and they just accepted me for who I was. I didn't fall into a clique. I kind of did it all. I mean, I was already singing and doing that, and I did drama, but I was also, the little rah-rah girl, and so I kind of didn't play into having to be a part of any kind of clique. I lived in a neighborhood with all the freaks, and so it was just wonderful. It was a wonderful childhood for me, and so I did that in Oklahoma, and then I moved. As soon as I graduated, I went out to California and thought I was going to go to school out there. I ended up going to school in Texas, but I came back here in the late 80s and met George in 90, and we made a life for ourselves here. And, of course, I was already playing in bands. As you heard, I had hired George. So I kind of done it all. I mean, and I've experienced a lot of different vibes, if you want to call it that. But I am just who I am, and I'm not going to change at this point. I'm just going to be me, and hopefully you like it. And if you don't, it's okay.
But I want to connect. You were saying that because Allison had asked about not succuming to the pressure. Of that social
so
piece.
So what would I say to the
because
moms out there today? I feel like the most important thing that we can do for our children is to be engaged with them early on and give them the opportunity to not have to ask questions from someone outside of the family, because they're going to. And if they can't talk to us about it, then they're going to find out about things through this phone that we give them, or this little tablet. Yes. And I'd much rather my children talk to me. Not to say that I have all the answers, but I want to give them a foundation before they start getting all this information. I think that the biggest detriment to what we have in our world today is there's too much information being given to them at too young of an age, where they can't really, they
don't have the mental capacity to process it.
Exactly. They don't know how to process that kind of information that early. But my children will tell you that there was no subject that they couldn't talk to me about, and some of them I would just be like, okay, here we go. But if they're going to ask me the question, that means that they're already thinking about it. And instead of making up a story and not telling them the real thing, I just got in there and told them. And I'm grateful for it now. And they tell me all the time, Mom, thank you so much. We don't have those kind of stigmas, and we don't have those insecurities that a lot of our friends do because they couldn't talk to their parents about it. And so I think probably the best advice I would have for all of you is less time on the devices, and more time with your kids, and go out and do things with them, and spend the time. George and I are at a place in our lives where don't buy me things, honey. Let's experience things.
Yes.
And so that's why I'm so excited about the bike riding and, what we're doing together. We're getting ready. For those of you that aren't familiar with this beautiful, unique by nature McKinney that we have trails all over the city that are beautiful. And you don't have to ride your bike. You can walk them. But it's amazing to me. I told George when we were riding last week, I said, if I came to this city and got on a bicycle and went through these trails, absolutely I would move here. And I would totally understand why it's unique by nature. I mean, we really do have all the conveniences of a big city, but we still have that small town feel.
That's exactly how I describe it for people. Well, I know that we need to wrap up. So I would love for you to maybe share your top 1 or 2 things you've learned in your time of serving the city alongside of Mayor Fuller that really are going to be anchoring points for you beyond his service in the role of mayor.
Well, we are living in a time where we hear this word inclusivity a lot and diversity and how important it is for us to really embark our lives to be that way. I don't think people really realize that we have 210,000 people here in McKinney now, and we have so many different ethnicities that have a hard time with that. And they're beautiful people that I have just so loved getting to know. And of course, I have a daughter that came from Africa and from Axum, Ethiopia, which was at the time when we adopted her, it was Jewish and Muslim and and Orthodox as well. And my family, my dad was Jewish and my mom was Christian. So I kind of had a little bit of that in my family too. But I don't think I really understood what it was like to get to know some other cultures and embrace them instead of feeling like I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it because it's not the way I was brought up.
Yeah.
And I have met some of the most beautiful people because George and I, we don't turn down an opportunity to meet people that are from different cultures and different ideas. And I always walk away feeling like I just got a nugget of looking into the eyes of God and understanding that we're all created by this wonderful being, however you want to believe. I happen to believe in Jesus Christ and the Lord as my Savior, but I also believe that other people that look to God think the same way. And I want to be embracing with them, and I want to understand it, and I want to love on them, and I want them to know that I don't think I have all the answers, and I want to learn from them. And so I think probably for me, one of the biggest things that I feel like we need to do is to embrace the changes that are taking place and not be afraid of it. We're seeing a lot of change.
Yes.
And sometimes we get scared because it's not the kind of change that we were thinking that we were going to be a part of. But it's just like anything in life. You have to decide where you are, and even when you are being taught in school or taught a process, you have to decide what about that is for me. And it doesn't mean you have to take it all and believe it all, but you can take some part of it and say, maybe that part is what I needed to learn, and forget the other. But you can still learn from people.
Absolutely.
And just not be afraid. And the one thing that we taught our kids early on is don't be afraid to meet people, engage with them, talk to them. George will tell you I'm really good at that, but I do it because I want to learn and I want to get to know them. And again, this is my journey too. And we're only here, however you believe, we're only here one time in this consciousness. And I'm going to be that person that goes out dragging me across the finish line. And God's going to go, oh, yeah, okay, you didn't leave anything behind. No stone unturned.
I love it. All right, so I happen to know that our guys wrap up all of the podcast with some this or that. So I thought...
this or that me?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
So you brought up Garth Brooks.
Yeah.
So are we doing Garth Brooks or George Strait?
Oh my goodness, that is so
I'm starting off hard.
That is so hard. I'm gonna have to say Garth, and I'm gonna say Garth because he appreciates the same kind of music that I do because we were both brought up listening to that 60s and 70s vibe. And if you've ever seen Garth Brooks play, and his one-man show that he did in Vegas, you can get it on Netflix. He and his guitar, he goes through, I don't even know, 20 songs.
Wow.
That we grew up listening to.
Yes.
And so he
I
stole
hear
me.
you.
He
What's
stole me
yours,
on that one.
Allison?
Yeah,
what's your this or that you want to ask?
Oh, let's see. Would you rather do dress like you were from the 70s or sing songs from the 70s?
Oh, gosh. It would definitely be sing songs from the 70s because I could sing them naked and be happy.
I absolutely love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. Well, the McKinney Podcast celebrates everything that makes McKinney unique. And you, Maylee Thomas, definitely are one of those things that makes McKinney unique. And we are so grateful.
You're going to make me cry here. I love this city, and we did talk about this a little bit, but we raised our family here.
Yeah.
We chose to be here. We were living, we were living in Dallas, and a girlfriend of mine, I'm going to give her kudos, Carrie Cameron, brought me out here. We played at actually, I played in a band that played for us in El Dorado, I think it was where it was at, or maybe Stonebridge for a big party. And I looked around and I thought, this is so cool. And I got to meet this girl, Carrie Cameron, and she said, you should move out there. George should come out there and build, because George was building. He was starting to build. And we came out here. He bought a piece of property in El Dorado, and that was it. We just decided we were going to raise our family here, and now here we are. 32 years later.
That's amazing.
McKinney is better for it.
Well, you're so sweet to say that. I think they are for George. I mean, I'm just going to have to give a little bit of kudos to my husband because he is a left brain, right brain guy, which is very rare. And he's super creative, but he's also a major, major thinker. And he's not too analytical, but he'll definitely...
He can leverage it.
And his strong point is tell him it can't be done. And then sit back and watch.
He says,
steps up.
Accepted.
Sit back and watch.
I'm going to show you how. Well, Maylee, thank you so much for joining us today. We are
thank you for having me, and
so
thank
grateful.
you so much, McKinney, for embracing us. We're in our last year. We're coming down to the finish line next May, and I just have to say that it's going to be a highlight of my life. I'm going to always... this will be my home. I've never lived anywhere as long as I've lived in McKinney, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be able to share love with all of you people out there. And if you see me, please come up and say hi. Don't ever think, I don't want to bother you. Bother me. I love it. I want to meet you. I want to know who you are. I want to give you a hug and tell you that you are valid. And I want to hear your story and know how you got here and understand that there's people that love you, and I'm one of them. So I hope I get to meet everybody out there that's listening.
Awesome.
You are forming a lasting legacy. Truly, you and George are. So thank you for being with us. This has been another episode of the McKinney Podcast. Make it a great day.